Hello, Judd fans. So some of you who watch my Mama Says YouTube series know that I met Naomi Judd twice. And some of you have reached out and asked me to share some memories, if I had any, about meeting her those two times. So while it was a long time ago, I do have very treasured and vivid memories of meeting her. So I thought I would just take a few minutes here and just share some of them. And hopefully we can all kind of reminisce about the wonderful woman that she was. So in 1999, in April, I met Naomi Judd for the first time. So I was 14 years old, and I was completely ecstatic just to be able to be in the same room with her. It was going to be a lecture because, as you know, after she retired from singing with Winona, she went out on the lecture circuit. So this was in Pasadena, California, at the Civic Auditorium. So after the lecture was over, I had brought with me three drawings that I did. One was a portrait of her, one of Winona, and one of Winona's daughter, Grace. At the time, she was like, I don't know, maybe 3 years old. And so I brought these with me in hopes that I might maybe get to meet her or see her after the lecture. So I was seated pretty far in the back. And just as it ended, my mom said to me, this is your once in a lifetime chance. So if you want to meet Naomi, if you want to try, go up there now and see if you can, get her attention. So me, characteristically very quiet, and I, especially back then, I barely spoke. So it was kind of funny when I shouted, Naomi, and I kind of walked hurriedly down the aisle at the edge of the auditorium, just as she was about to walk off the stage into the wings. So the second I said her name, she just stopped and she turned to see who it was. And of course, she gave me that big, beautiful smile of hers and came right over to me. And I showed her immediately the drawings that I wanted to give her. And I remember the first thing she said was, "You're an artist," and just in a very encouraging, sweet tone. And then I went probably rambling on about how I did them and wanted to give them to her. And she had laid them out just sort of on the stage so she could look at them. And she would look at me as I was talking, then look back at the pictures, just, giving that human connection that was so important for her to give. And so I said, "Can I hug you?" And it was a very awkward position because the stage was like, probably, very high up. And so she bent down and I sort of reached up and hugged her as best I could. And then I noticed that she started to sit down on the edge of the stage. So I backed up a little bit and she just dangled her legs off of the stage. She was wearing like this sort of very light mint green type of a suit. And I was wearing this blouse behind me up here that I've saved all these years. I know it looks a little mature for a 14-year-old, but then I was a mature 14-year-old. I've always been a very old soul. So it had matching pants and it was kind of cute back then. But anyway, so she went to sit down on the stage and I didn't really know why, but I was, happy that she was going to stay a little bit. So I turn around and see that this crowd had gathered because, of course, other people in the audience saw that she was talking to me. So, of course, they wanted to hopefully meet her too. So she was kind enough to sit, talk with all of us, answer some questions. And I remember some people even had, pretty serious questions about the hepatitis C. And either they or I believe their husband was dealing with hepatitis. So she was giving out information and just being so kind and patient with everyone. And of course, this went on for a little while. And some of the people at the auditorium were saying, "Okay, guys, it's, time to go," and, trying to get us out of there. But Naomi, did not have any of that. She wanted to stay and talk with us. She even asked her assistant to go get us some 8x10 photos that she brought. And I actually have one of those still that she gave to me that night, which I don't think it's visible on my Judd wall back here, but I'll show it to you in a photo at the end of the video. So that was, that was enough for me. I was on cloud 9 about that. And so went home and probably told everyone that I knew, and I'm still telling everyone of course. And the fun part was, the fun little twist is that I think it was about 3 months later, Naomi had this radio show, Heart to Heart, where people would call in and she'd give advice and all that. So I called it one night. It was the first time that I'd ever called in. And I was kind of wanting her to know who I was and see if she'd remember me. So I told her, I'm the one that met you recently at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium and gave you those drawings of you, Winona, and Grace. Well, she not only remembered me, she told me that she put one of them up on her refrigerator door. So that just made my life, of course. And still one of my best memories to this day. So that was my first experience meeting Naomi. And as I said, that was in 1999, April 14th of 1999. So about 5 years later, in 2004, January of 2004, I met her for the second time. And this was at a Barnes & Noble book signing. She was signing Naomi's Breakthrough Guide. And it was in LA at the Grove. Some of you may know that sort of big shopping center in LA. So, and this was after, 5 years of just praying to meet her again. And during that time of just hoping that I'd get a second chance to see her, I had made for her kind of like a photo scrapbook of the Judd's career, just from beginning until the reunion. It was like in chronological order. And I had spent probably the whole 5 years making it, but not really. It probably took me about 2 years to make. I just slowly compiled it and saved it, hoping one day I'd give it to her again or get to see her again to actually hand it to her. And then my mom had this really pretty silver bracelet that we engraved her name on. And this was all just done in faith, just in hopes that one day we'd see her again, that she'd come to town and at either a book signing or a lecture. And I remember people saying to me, why are you making this and buying this bracelet? Because you have no idea if you're ever going to see her again, which was true, but I had faith and I just believed that I would. So, of course, in January of 2004, those prayers were answered. I went to the book signing, equipped with my photo book and the bracelet to give to her. And so after she gave a little talk, before the actual signing happened, we all lined up and got our chance to meet her, of course. So when it was my turn, I immediately just remember kind of rambling about, who I was and that I had met her before and that, hopefully all these things that would sort of jog her memory to know who I was, because I didn't really expect that she would, because it had been 5 years. But I shouldn't have second guessed Naomi, because she actually named the place that I'd met her before. She said, at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium, the Distinguished Speaker Series. And I said, yes, oh my gosh. So I gave her the photo book. And I remember her just looking at it, and she immediately, her mouth just dropped open, like she was just so stunned that, she was looking at this whole chronicle of her career. And as she was looking at it, she was seated, behind a desk. So I put my arm around her as she looked at it, and I really wanted to give her a hug, but of course she was sitting down. So instinctively, I just reached in and gave her a kiss on the cheek. And she's had the sweetest, most beautiful scent. And I remember her taking my wrist, and she said, I want to give you something. And so a little bit after that, her assistant took my address. And then my mom also gave her the bracelet that we had brought for her. And so we left, and then I was in the lobby getting ready to go out because the book signing was on the 3rd floor of the Barnes & Noble. And as I was in the lobby getting ready to leave with my mom and my grandmother, I see Naomi coming out of the elevator. She was also leaving at the same time. And of course, I put my arm out. She immediately put her arm around me and gave my grandmother this big hug. Like, it was like you give to family, not just one of those quick ones, but she just really embraced her. And I'm so glad that I got to see that and remember that, because my grandmother loved Naomi, and of course they're both together now. And then I remember just watching Naomi walk out into the darkness because it was nighttime by then. And that was the last time that I saw her. But of course, a few weeks later, I got a package in the mail because remember she said that she wanted to give me something. Well, I'll show you what that was. And it was her Esteem skincare line. So back then, some of you might remember she had a skincare line, really pretty smelling bath soap, and it had some like a moisturizer and all that in it. It's still all in here. Of course, I used it, but I saved the remnants and the packaging. So I'll show you some closer up pictures of it in photos afterward. And then when I was there at the signing, as I said, she was signing Naomi's Breakthrough Guide. So I still have the book that she signed. I'll show you the signature page. So in her pretty purple handwriting. And these are just some of the memories that I have. And, it's just it was such a privilege, I feel, to have met her. And as many stories as I read about people that met her, maybe 5 and 10 times. And then I've read stories of people that never met her, but I think we all felt like we all felt like we knew her because she was so personable. And I'm just glad to be able to share my stories with you. And if any of you have met Naomi, please leave your stories for me in the comments of the video. I'd love to read them, and then we can, remember her together. And thank you again to everyone who's been watching the Mama Says series here, and for taking a little time out to reminisce with me and let me tell my favorite stories to tell, which are about meeting Naomi. Now you might wonder why I don't have any photos. This was back in 1999. The first time I didn't even own a cell phone, didn't even think to bring a camera. The second time, the bookstore was very adamant about no photos. There were some press there, a lot of press people. And so I have a couple photos that I found, online, which I'll show you from that night. But I didn't get any personal photos with Naomi, but all of the memories are in my heart and I treasure them. And thank you so much again for taking the time to listen.